Alaska pretty much writes itself. It's for anybody who's been there, they'll tell you. It dominates everything we do. I mean, it's a land of extremes. 3 mountain ranges and hundreds, if not thousands, of rivers and streams, and 3 major earthquake faults, and 36,000 miles of coastline, if you include all the islands and archipelagos. It's just, I mean, I coined a phrase one time. I said, you put 4 Alaskans in a room, you'll have 5 marriages, 6 divorces, and 7 political parties. And people laugh, but it's true. Well, I almost died in a car wreck, and that will focus your attention. And I decided, okay, I'd been working for BP for about 6 years, and I'd saved up some money, and I thought, okay, time to fish or cut bait. And I quit, and I went back to school, and I got my master's degree, and my goal was to sell a novel, just one novel, anything, I didn't care, before I ran out of slope money. And I think I had something like $1,100 in the bank when I sold my first book. It was in between my second and third science fiction novels, and I have no background in the hard sciences, so I looked everything up 5 and 6 times and probably still got half of it all wrong. And I was tired of doing the research. There was one more science fiction novel I wanted to write, but I just wanted to take a rest, and I'd been reading mysteries at the time. So I thought, gee, I wonder if I can write a mystery. I mean, really, it was pretty much, and it was the lazy woman's way to write a mystery. I wasn't going to work very hard at it. So I'd spend a lot of time sitting around tables with a lot of Alaskan old farts whose private property in the Wrangell St. Elias Park had been grandfathered in. The park had been created around them, and they hated the Park Service. Hated them. I couldn't even repeat some of the things that they said. So I had a natural victim. So, I mean, it was easy to kill off a ranger. It was just... And then Kate is a woman because it's easier to write in your own gender. And she was an Aleut because I was raised with Aleuts. And I think the only reference work I used when I wrote the book was the Alaska Almanac, Book of Facts, and my own memory. And that was it. If they've sold their book, you have to stop obsessing about it right away and just get on with the next book and write every day. And that may sound really simple, but it's not. The second book is always the hardest, because that's, the first book can always have been a fluke. And writers are probably the biggest self-doubters out there. And so you just have to keep moving forward. You absolutely must do that. You must write every day. I don't care if it's only a page a day or even a paragraph a day. At least that's more than you had the day before. And the next day you will have a little bit more, and the day after that. And don't worry about marketing. Don't worry about the cover art. Don't worry about, the editing. Don't worry about any of that stuff. Deal with it as it comes up, but just keep moving forward with your next book. If you want to do this as a profession, that's absolutely essential.
I always start with the setting, always. It doesn't, if I'm writing science fiction, that could be low Earth orbit or the moon or the asteroid belt or Mars. If I'm writing a new series now set in Alexandria in the time of Cleopatra. So 2,000 years ago in Alexandria, Egypt, I always start with a setting first. Then I can figure out who lives there and what kind of trouble they get up to. And the 7th and most important one is every character gets a backstory. I don't care if it's the mailman and all he does is drop a letter off at your front door, or if it's a character that has a subplot through the entire book and that might last beyond that book longer into the series. Every character, it's the ensemble cast is what makes a good book. And the ensemble cast is what gives a series legs. So pay attention to your ensemble cast. The main character obviously has to be great too, but I believe that the ensemble cast has to be equally as great. Relationships are what define us, not just romance, friendships, parental relationships, relationships with our kids. And Kate and my characters are generally pretty red-blooded American citizens. In the Kate and the Liam series anyway, in the 2 thrillers, they're going to have sex and they're going to enjoy it. Otherwise, what's the point? I get up every morning and I have an office in my house, and I go straight to work, and I don't stop until I write 5 or 10 pages that day. It depends on where I am in the book as to how much I produce every day. There comes a point when you're writing a book where with me, it's like about 1/3 to 2/3, half to 2/3 of the way through when you're at the top of the mountain. I'm at the top of the mountain. I can see everything laid out in front of me, and I just gallop down to the finish. But it can be a real slog getting to the top of that mountain, as you might imagine, from the metaphor anyway.
Well, that sparks another question for me. How much of your editing do you do yourself versus with an editor? And has that changed as you become a more experienced writer?
Oh, it's changed massively. I used to write probably back in the early days, I was writing like 7 drafts of a book. I think that was the most I ever did. Now, usually it's 2, at the most 3, if I've really screwed up somewhere. So it does get better. You do get better at this the more you do it. What are some books that I've read recently? I just finished the most recent Greg Hurwitz book. I think it's the 7th Orphan X book. There's a guy who knows how to plot. I mean, seriously. And let me see, I just read Paper Son by S.J. Roseanne, which is an excellent book. A New Yorker goes to the Deep South. When you read it, it feels like she's really, really got the accent down without using a lot of dumb diacriticals and, contractions and stuff. It feels very much like she is there, and she brings you there with her. I really recommend that book, Paper Son by S.J. Roseanne. And really the writers that I keep going back to are the writers that I read when I was a kid. I didn't read hardly any kids' books because I was raised on a boat, and my mom had a great big huge cardboard box full of paperbacks that were printed in that day, in the 50s and the 60s. So we're talking people like Neville Shute or Samuel Schellebarger or Anya Seton. I still have Neville Shute on my shelf. I still have Georgia Hare on my shelf. Of more modern authors, I really love P.F. Chisholm's Sir Robert Carey books. I love Stephanie Barron's, Jane Austen, crime fiction novels. I read a lot of nonfiction. I just read the longest biography known to man about Winston Churchill. Oh God, it took me 4 months. You know what, Michaela? There's only so many ways you can kill people, number 1. And there are only like about 3 motives. Let me see. There's sex, money, and revenge. And that's about it. And there you are. Or some combination of those 3. So we essentially are telling the same story, all of us, over and over again. So you're going to find plenty of parallels. I did actually, the Kate Shugak novels in particular have been optioned, I think it's 7 times now. And I thought I had found someone who would actually film it in Alaska, but it didn't happen. And frankly, I gave notes on, I don't know how many scripts, and you and I are very happy that it didn't. You don't really sell the rights. What happens is they option them. And then the good money comes and it's pretty good. The option money can be pretty good. It was anywhere from $5,000 to $25,000 for me. And but the real money comes if the script is produced, i.e. if it is made into a film or a television series. So I never got that far. The options just, they would come up with, I would give notes, they would pay me for that too, which was nice. And it just never made it to filming. And at this point, I'm fine with that. And I'm at a place in my life where I don't really need the money from screen rights. And I think after my experience with Hollywood, I have to say that I think Sue Grafton was right. I don't know if you guys know who Sue Grafton is, right? She wrote the A for Alibi B. She wrote the Alphabet Murders, Kinsey Mahone. Yep. And I interviewed her at a BoucherCon one time, and she said flatly, she just said it, and to where, she was making a statement, and there was no arguing with her about it. She came originally from screenwriting to novel writing, and she enjoined her heirs from ever selling screenwrites to the Kinsey Millhone series, because she knew she had personal experience of what happened when a book was sold to become a film. Now, you can always find books that have been treated really well in Hollywood. I mean, like the one that we all think of is To Kill a Mockingbird. Or, for example, I think a really well-made film from a book is Thomas Kinsella's Shoeless Joe was turned into Field of Dreams. But those are and the best one ever is Michael Connelly's Lincoln Lawyer. It's the best cast, the best written, the best film book adaptation ever. So I really strongly recommend you watch that if you can. But most of the time, that is not the case. And I love books, and I love the writers who write them. And I hate seeing what happens to them when they're put up on screen. Yeah, you make a lot of money, but I don't know. For me, it's not worth it. I know everybody wants to see it up on screen. I get that all the time from the Dana Maniacs. But man, what you see on screen is not necessarily what's in the books you love. Well, at one time I would have killed to have Irene Bedard play Kate Shubak. She was just perfect. She was just like, and so now in my mind, she's Kate to me. She is the screen Kate to me. And and she has probably aged out of the part by now. So really, I don't see anybody else coming up that I've seen suggestions that people have said to me, what about her? What about her? And I've gone and looked them up on IMDb, and I'm thinking, nope, that's not Kate. Right. Remember that writers work alone, and all alone, all by themselves. And it's not because we like public speaking. It's because we're used to being cooped up alone, chained to our laptops. So this is really the only way that I get to talk to people who read my books. So it's kind of fun for me too. So thanks for that.